As by the grace of God, we have complete freedom because the Lord is kind to us. We can live anywhere, either in the spiritual sky or in the material sky, upon whichever planet we desire. However, misuse of this freedom causes one to fall down into the material world and suffer the threefold miseries of conditioned life. The living of a miserable life in the material world by dint of the soul's choice is nicely illuminated by Milton in Paradise Lost. Similarly, by choice, the soul can regain paradise and return home back to Godhead. At the critical time of death, one can place the vital force between the two eyebrows and decide where he wants to go. If he is reluctant to maintain any connection with the material world, he can, in less than a second, reach the transcendental abode of Vaikuntha and appear there completely in a spiritual body, which will be suitable for him in the spiritual atmosphere. He has simply to desire to leave the material world both in finer and in grosser forms, and then move the vital force to the topmost part of the skull and leave the body from the hole in the skull called the Brahmarandra. This is easy for one perfect in the practice of yoga. Of course, man is endowed with free will, and as such, if he does not want to free himself from the material world, he may enjoy the life of Brahmapada, occupation of the post of Brahma, and visit Siddhaloka, the planets of materially perfect beings, who have full capacities to control gravity, space, and time. To visit these higher planets in the material universe, one need not give up his mind and intelligence, finer matter, but need only give up grosser matter, the material body. Each and every planet has its particular atmosphere, and if one wants to travel to any particular planet within the material universe, one has to adapt his material body to the climatic condition of that planet. For instance, if one wants to go from India to Europe, where the climatic condition is different, one has to change his dress accordingly. Similarly, a complete change of body is necessary if one wants to go to the transcendental planets of Vaikuntha. However, if one wants to go to the higher material planets, he can keep his finer dress of mind, intelligence, and ego, but has to leave his gross dress, body, made of earth, water, fire, etc. When one goes to a transcendental planet, it is necessary to change both the finer and gross bodies, for one has to reach the spiritual sky completely in a spiritual form. This change of dress will take place automatically at the time of death if one so desires. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that one will attain his next material body according to his desires at the time he leaves his body. The desire of the mind carries the soul to a suitable atmosphere as the wind carries aromas from one place to another. Unfortunately, those who are not yogis but gross materialists, who throughout their lives indulge in sense gratification, are puzzled by the disarrangement of the bodily and mental condition at the time of death. Such gross sensualists, encumbered by the main ideas, desires, and association of the lives they have led, desire something against their interest, and thus foolishly take on new bodies that perpetuate their material miseries. Systematic training of the mind and intelligence is therefore needed so that at the time of death, one may consciously desire a suitable body either on this planet or another material planet or even a transcendental planet. A civilization that does not consider the progressive advancement of the immortal soul merely fosters a bestial life of ignorance. It is foolish to think that every soul that passes away goes to the same place. Either the soul goes to a place he desires at the time of death, or upon leaving his body he is forced to accept a position according to his acts in his previous life. The difference between the materialist and the yogi is that a materialist cannot determine his next body, whereas a yogi can consciously attain a suitable body for enjoyment in the higher planets. Throughout his life, The gross materialist, who is constantly after sense gratification, spends all day earning his livelihood to maintain his family, and at night he wastes his energy in sex enjoyment, or else goes to sleep thinking about all he has done in the daytime. That is the monotonous life of the materialist. Although differently graded as businessmen, lawyers, politicians, professors, judges, coolies, pickpockets, laborers, and so on, materialists all simply engage in eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratification, and thus spoil their valuable lives pursuing luxury and neglecting to perfect their lives through spiritual realization. Yogis, however, try to perfect their lives, and therefore the Bhagavad Gita enjoins that everyone should become a yogi. Yoga is the system for linking the soul in the service of the Lord. Only under superior guidance can one practice such yoga in his life without changing his social position. As already described, a yogi can go anywhere he desires without mechanical help, for a yogi can place his mind and intelligence within the air circulating inside his body, and by practicing the art of breath control, he can mix that air with the air that blows all over the universe outside his body. With the help of this universal air, a yogi can travel to any planet and get a body suitable for its atmosphere. We can understand this process by comparing it to the electronic transmission of radio messages. With radio transmitters, sound waves produced at a certain station can travel all over the earth in seconds. But sound is produced from the ethereal sky, and, as already explained, subtler than the ethereal sky is the mind, and finer than the mind is the intelligence. Spirit is still finer than the intelligence, and by nature it is completely different from matter. Thus we can just imagine how quickly the soul can travel through the universal atmosphere. To come to the stage of manipulating finer elements like mind, intelligence, and spirit, one needs appropriate training, an appropriate mode of life, and appropriate association. Such training depends upon sincere prayers, devotional service, achievement of success in mystic perfection, and a successful merging of oneself in the activities of the soul and supersoul. A gross materialist, whether he be an empiric philosopher, a scientist, a psychologist, or whatever, cannot attain such success through blunt efforts and word jugglery. Materialists who perform yajnas, or great sacrifices, are comparatively better than gross materialists who do not know anything beyond laboratories and test tubes. The advanced materialists who perform such sacrifices can reach the planet called Vishvanara, a fiery planet similar to the sun. On this planet, which is situated on the way to Brahmaloka, the topmost planet in the universe, such an advanced materialist can free himself from all traces of vice and its effects. When such a materialist is purified, he can rise to the orbit of the pole star, Dhruvaloka. Within this orbit, which is called the Sisumara Chakra, are situated the Aditya Lokas and the Vaikuntha planet within this universe, namely the pole star. A purified materialist who has performed many sacrifices, undergone severe penances, and given the major portion of his wealth in charity, can reach such planets as Dhruvaloka. And if he becomes still more qualified there, he can penetrate still higher orbits and pass through the navel of the universe to reach the planet Maharloka, where sages like Brigamuni live. In Maharloka, one can live even to the time of the partial annihilation of the universe. This annihilation begins when Anantadeva, from the lowest portion in the universe, produces a great blazing fire. The heat of this fire reaches even Maharloka, and then the residents of Maharloka travel to Brahmaloka, which exists for twice the duration of Parada time. In Brahmaloka, there is an unlimited number of airplanes that are controlled not by yantra, machine, but by mantra, psychic action. Because of the existence of the mind and intelligence on Brahmaloka, its residents have feelings of happiness and distress, but there is no cause of lamentation from old age, death, fear, or distress. They feel sympathy, however, for the suffering living beings who are consumed in the fire of annihilation. The residents of Brahmaloka do not have gross material bodies to change at death, but they transform their subtle bodies into spiritual bodies and thus enter the spiritual sky. The residents of Brahmaloka can attain perfection in 3 different ways. Virtuous persons who reach Brahmaloka by dint of their pious work become masters of various planets after the resurrection of Brahma. Those who have worshipped Garbhodaksha Vishnu are liberated with Brahma, and those who are pure devotees of the Personality Godhead at once push through the covering of the universe and enter the spiritual sky. The numberless universes exist together in foam-like clusters, and so only some of them are surrounded by the water of the causal ocean. When agitated by the glance of Karanadakshite Vishnu, material nature produces the total elements, which are 8 in number, and which gradually evolve from finer to gross. A part of ego is the sky, a part of which is air, a part of which is fire, a part of which is water, a part of which is earth. Thus, one universe inflates to an area of 4 billion miles in diameter. A yogi who desires gradual liberation must penetrate all the different coverings of the universe, including the subtle coverings of the 3 qualitative modes of material nature. One who does this never has to return to this mortal world. According to Sukadeva Goswami, the above description of the material and spiritual skies is neither imaginary nor utopian. The actual facts are recorded in the Vedic hymns, and Lord Vasudeva disclosed them to Lord Brahma when Brahma satisfied him. One can achieve the perfection of life only when he has a definite idea of Vaikuntha and the Supreme Godhead. One should always think about and describe the Supreme Personality Godhead, for this is recommended in both the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavata Purana, which are 2 authorized commentaries upon the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya has made all these subject matters easier for the fallen people of this age to accept, and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita has therefore presented them for the easy understanding of all concerned. Lord Krishna manifests his own form in Mathura and Dwarka. He enjoys pastimes in various ways by expanding into the quadruple forms. Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are the primary quadruple forms from whom all other quadruple forms are manifested. They are all purely transcendental. Only in these 3 phases, only in these 3 places, Dwarka, Mathura, and Gokula, does the all-sporting Lord Krishna perform his endless pastimes with his personal associates. In the Vaikuntha planets of the spiritual sky, the Lord manifests his identity as Narayana and performs pastimes in various ways. Krishna's own form has only 2 hands, but in the form of Lord Narayana, he has 4 hands. Lord Narayana holds a conch shell, disc, club, and lotus flower, and he is full of great opulence. The Shri, Bhu, and Nila energies serve at his lotus feet. Purport. In the Ramanuja and Madhava sects of Vaishnavism, there are extensive descriptions of Shri, Bhu, and Nila energies. In Bengal, the Nila energy is sometimes called the Leela energy. These 3 energies are employed in the service of 4-handed Narayana in Vaikuntha. Relating how Three of the Alvars, namely Bhuta Yogi, Sara Yogi, and Branta Yogi, saw Narayana in person when they took shelter at the house of a Brahmana in the village of Gehali. The Prapanamrita of the Sri Sampradaya describes Narayana as follows. They saw the lotus-eyed Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, mounted on Garuda and holding Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, to his chest. He resembled a bluish rain cloud with flashing lightning, and in two of his forehands he held a conch shell and disc. His arms stretched down to his knees, and all his beautiful limbs were smeared with sandalwood and decorated with glittering ornaments. He wore yellow clothes, and by either side stood his energies, Bhumi and Nila. There is the following reference to the Shri, Bhu, and Nila energies in the Sito Pranashad. Mahalakshmi Deveshasya Bina Bina Rupa Chaitana Chaitanatmika Sadevi Trivida Bhavati, and so forth. Mahalakshmi, the supreme energy of the Lord, is experienced in different ways. She is divided into material and spiritual potencies, and in both features she acts as the willing energy, creative energy, and the internal energy. The willing energy is again divided into three, namely Shri, Bhu, and Nila. Quoting from the revealed scriptures in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita 4.6, Madhvacharya has stated that Mother Material Nature, which is conceived of as the illusory energy Durga, has three divisions, namely Shri, Bhu, and Nila. She is the illusory energy for those who are weak in spiritual strength, because such energies are created energies of Lord Vishnu. Although each energy has no direct relationship with the unlimited, they are subordinate to the Lord because the Lord is the master of all energies. In his Bhagavad Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu states, the Padma Purana refers to the eternally auspicious abode of Godhead, which is full in all opulences, including the energies Shri, Bhu, and Nila. The Mahasamhita, which discusses the transcendental name and form of Godhead, also mentions Durga as the potency of the Supersoul in relationship with the living entities. The internal potency acts in relation with his personal affairs, and the material potency manifests the three modes. Quoting elsewhere from the revealed scriptures, he states that Shri is the energy of Godhead that maintains the cosmic manifestation. Bhu is the energy that creates the cosmic manifestation, and Nila, Durga, is the energy that destroys the creation, and all these energies act in relation with the living beings, and thus they're together called Jiva Maya. Although his pastimes are his only characteristic functions, by his causeless mercy he performs one activity for the fallen souls. He delivers the fallen souls, he delivers the fallen living entities by offering them the four kinds of liberation: Salokya, Samipya, Shashti, and Sarupya. And purport by Srila Prabhupada. There are two kinds of liberated souls: those who are liberated by the favor of the Lord, and those who are liberated by their own effort. One who gets liberation by his own effort is called an impersonalist, and emerges into the glaring effulgence of the Lord, the Brahman Jyoti. But the devotees of the Lord who qualify themselves for liberation by devotional service are offered four kinds of liberation, namely Salokya, status equal to that of the Lord; Samipya, that means basically living on the same planet as the Lord; Samipya, constant association with the Lord; Shashti, opulence equal to that of the Lord; and Sarupya, features like those of the Lord. Those who attain Brahma Sayujya, liberation, cannot gain entrance into Vaikuntha. Their residence is outside the Vaikuntha planets. So Sayuja is merging into Brahmajyoti. Outside the Vaikuntha planets is the atmosphere of the glowing effulgence, which consists of the supremely bright rays of the body of Lord Krishna. That region is called Siddhaloka, and it is beyond the material nature. Its essence is spiritual, but it does not have spiritual varieties. It is like the homogeneous effulgence around the sun. But inside the sun are the chariots, horses, and other opulences of the sun god. Purport. Outside of Vaikuntha, the abode of Krishna, which is called Paravyoma, is the glaring effulgence of Krishna's bodily rays. This is called Brahmajyoti. The transcendental region of that effulgence is called Siddhaloka or Brahmaloka. When impersonalists achieve liberation, they merge into that Brahmaloka effulgence. This transcendental region is undoubtedly spiritual, but it contains no manifestations of spiritual activities or variegatedness. It is compared to the glow of the sun. Within the sun's glow is a sphere of the sun, where one can experience all sorts of varieties. As through devotion to the Lord, one can attain his abode, many have attained that goal by abandoning their sinful activities and absorbing their minds in the Lord through lust, envy, fear, or affection. Purport. As the powerful sun, by its glowing rays, can purify all kinds of impurities, so the all-spiritual personality of Godhead can purify all material qualities in a person he attracts. Even if one is attracted by Godhead in the mode of material lust, such attraction is converted into spiritual love of Godhead by his grace. Similarly, if one is related to the Lord in fear and animosity, he also becomes purified by the spiritual attraction of the Lord. Although God is great and a living entity small, they are spiritual individuals, and therefore, as soon as there is a reciprocal exchange by the living entity's free will, at once the great spiritual being attracts the small living entity, thus freeing him from all material bondage. This is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 1st chapter, 30th verse. Where it has been stated that the Lord's enemies and devotees attain the same destination, this refers to the ultimate oneness of Brahman and Lord Krishna. This may be understood by the example of the sun and the sunshine, in which Brahman is like the sunshine and Krishna himself is like the sun. Purport. This verse is from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-278 of Srila Rupa Goswami, who further discusses the same topic in his Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Purva 541. There he refers to the Vishnu Purana 4.15.1, where Maitreya Muni asked Parasara, in regard to Jaya and Vijaya, how it was that Hiranyakashipu next became Ravana and enjoyed more material happiness than the demigods, but did not attain salvation. Although, when he became Sisupala, quarreled with Krishna and was killed, he attained salvation and merged into the body of Lord Krishna. Parasara replied that Hiranyakashipu failed to recognize Lord Nrsingadev as Lord Vishnu. He thought that Nrsingadeva was some living entity who had acquired such opulence by various pious activities. Being overcome by the mode of passion, he considered Lord Nrsingadeva an ordinary living entity, not understanding his form. Nevertheless, because Hiranyakashipu was killed by the hands of Lord Nrsingadeva, in his next life he became Ravana and had proprietorship of unlimited opulence. As Ravana, with unlimited material enjoyment, he could not accept Lord Rama as the personality of Godhead. Therefore, even though he was killed by Rama, he did not attain Sayuja, or oneness with the body of the Lord. In his Ravana body, he was too much attracted to Rama's wife, Janaki, and because of that attraction, he was able to see Rama, but instead of accepting Lord Rama as an incarnation of Vishnu, Ravana thought him an ordinary living being. When killed by the hands of Rama, therefore, he got the privilege of taking birth as Sisupala, who had such immense opulence that he could think himself a competitor to Krishna. Although Sisupala was always envious of Krishna, he frequently uttered the name of Krishna and always thought of the beautiful features of Krishna. Thus, by constantly thinking and chanting of Krishna, even unfavorably, he was cleansed of the contamination of his sinful activities. When Sisupala was killed by the Sudarshan Chakra of Krishna as an enemy, his constant remembrance of Krishna dissolved the reaction of his vices, and he attained salvation by becoming one with the body of the Lord. From this incident, one can understand that even a person who thinks of Krishna as an enemy and is killed by him may be liberated by becoming one with the body of Krishna. What then must be the destination of devotees who always think favorably of Krishna in their master, as their master or friend? These devotees must attain a situation better than Brahmaloka, the impersonal bodily effulgence of Krishna. Devotees cannot be situated in the impersonal Brahman effulgence, into which impersonalists desire to merge. The devotees are placed in Vaikuntha, or Krishna Loka. This discussion between Maitreya Muni and Parasara Muni centered on whether devotees come down into the material world in every millennium like Jaya and Vijaya, who were cursed by the Kumaras, to that effect. In the course of these instructions to Maitreya about Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, and Sisupala, Parasara did not say that these demons were formerly Jaya and Vijaya. He simply described a transmigration through 3 lives. It is not necessary for the Vaikuntha associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to come to take the roles of his enemies in all the millenniums in which he appears. The fall down of Jaya and Vijaya occurred in a particular millennium. Jaya and Vijaya do not come down in every millennium to act as demons. To think that some associates of the Lord fall down from Vaikuntha in every millennium to become demons is totally incorrect. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has all the tendencies that may be found in a living entity, for he is the chief living entity. Therefore, it is natural that sometimes Lord Vishnu wants to fight. Just as he has the tendencies to create, to enjoy, to be a friend, to accept a mother and father, and so on. He also has the tendency to fight. Sometimes important landlords and kings keep wrestlers with them, with whom they practice mock fighting, and Vishnu makes similar arrangements. The demons who fight with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the material world are sometimes his associates. When there is a scarcity of demons and the Lord wants to fight, he instigates some of his associates of Vaikuntha to come and play as demons. When it is said that Sisupala merged into the body of Krishna, it should be noted that in this case he was not Jaya or Vijaya, he was actually a demon. In his Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Srila Sanatana Goswami has explained that the attainment of salvation by merging into the Brahman effulgence of the Lord cannot be accepted as the highest success in life, because demons like Kamsa, who were famous for killing brahmanas and cows, attained that salvation. For devotees, such salvation is abominable. Devotees are actually in a transcendental position, whereas non-devotees are candidates for hellish conditions of life. There is always a difference between the life of a devotee and the life of a demon, and their realizations are as different as heaven and hell. Demons are always accustomed to being malicious toward devotees and to killing brahmanas and cows. For demons, merging into the Brahman effulgence may be very glorious, but for devotees it is hellish. A devotee's aim in life is to attain perfection in loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who aspire to merge into the Brahman effulgence are as abominable as demons. Devotees who aspire to associate with the Supreme Lord, to render him transcendental loving service, are far superior. Thus, in the spiritual sky, there are varieties of pastimes within the spiritual energy. Outside the Vaikuntha planets appears the impersonal reflection of light. That impersonal Brahman effulgence consists only of the effulgent rays of the Lord. Those fit for Sayuja liberation merge into that effulgence. Beyond the region of ignorance, the material cosmic manifestation, lies the realm of Siddhaloka. The Siddhas reside there, absorbed in the bliss of Brahman. Demons killed by the Lord attain that realm. Purport. Tamas means darkness. The material world is dark, and beyond the material world is light. In other words, after passing through the entire material atmosphere, one can come to the luminous spiritual sky, whose impersonal effulgence is known as Siddhaloka. Mayavadi philosophers who aspire to merge with the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as well as demoniac persons who are killed by Krishna, such as Kamsa and Sisupala, enter that Brahman effulgence. Yogis who attain oneness through meditation according to the Patanjali Yoga system also reach Siddhaloka. This is a verse from the Brahmanda Purana. In that spiritual sky, on the four sides of Narayana, are the second expansions of the quadruple expansions of Dwarka. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Within the spiritual sky is the second manifestation of the quadruple forms of Dwarka from the abode of Krishna. Among these forms, which are all spiritual and immune to the material modes, Shri Baladeva is represented as Mahasankarsana. The activities in the spiritual sky are manifested by the internal potency in pure spiritual existence. They expand in 6 transcendental opulences, which are all manifestations of Mahasankarsana, who is the ultimate reservoir and objective of all living entities. Although belonging to the marginal potency known as Jiva Shakti, the spiritual sparks known as the living entities are subjected to the conditions of material energy. It is because these sparks are related with both the internal and external potencies of the Lord that they are known as belonging to the marginal potency. In considering the quadruple forms of the Absolute Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradumna, and Aniruddha, the impersonalists headed by Sripad Sankaracharya have interpreted the aphorisms of the Vedic Sutra in a way suitable for the impersonal school. To provide the intrinsic import of such aphorisms, however, Srila Rupa Goswami, the leader of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavana, has properly replied to the impersonalists in his Lagu Bhagavatamrita, which is a natural commentary on the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra. So later on we will hear how Sankaracharya misinterpreted the Vedanta Sutra, and especially in respect to the second quadruple expansion of Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradumna, and Aniruddha, in order to create the impersonal school of philosophy. That will be explained in the 7th chapter of the Adi Lila. The Padma Purana, as quoted by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Lagu Bhagavatamrita, describes that in the spiritual sky there are 4 directions corresponding to east, west, north, and south, in which Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Aniruddha, and Pradumna are situated. The same forms are also situated in the material sky. The Padma Purana also describes a place in the spiritual sky known as Vedavati Pura, where Vasudeva resides. In Vishnu Loka, which is above Satya Loka, Sankarsana resides. Mahasankarsana is another name of Sankarsana. Pradumna lives in Dwarka Pura, and Aniruddha lies on the eternal bed of Shesha, generating generally known as Anantashaya, on the island called Swetadvipa in the Ocean of Milk. Vasudeva, Sankar's son, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha constitute the second quadruple. They are purely transcendental. Purport. Shripad Sankaracharya has misleadingly explained the quadruple form, Chaturvyuha, in his interpretation of the 42nd aphorism of chapter 2 of the second Kanda of the Vedanta Sutra, Utpatti Asambhavat. In verses 41 through 47 of this chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj answers Shripad Sankaracharya's misleading objections to the personal feature of the Absolute Truth. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is not like a material object that can be known by experimental knowledge or sense perception. In the Narada Pancharadra, this fact has been explained by Narayana himself to Lord Shiva. But Sankarsana, the incarnation of Shiva, under the order of Narayana, his master, had to mislead the monists, or the impersonalists, who favor ultimate extinction. In the conditioned stage of existence, all living entities have four basic defects, of which one is the cheating propensity. Sankaracharya has carried this cheating propensity to the extreme to mislead the monists. Actually, the explanation of the quadruple form in the Vedic literature cannot be understood by the speculation of a conditioned soul. The quadruple forms should therefore be accepted just as they are described. The authority of the Vedas is such that even if one does not understand something by his limited perception, he should accept the Vedic injunction and not create interpretations to suit his imperfect understanding. In his Sarirak Bhasya, however, Sankaracharya has increased the misunderstanding of the monists. The quadruple forms have a special existence that can be realized in Vasudeva Sattva, Sutta Sattva, or unqualified goodness, which accompanies complete absorption in the understanding of Vasudeva, or Krishna. The quadruple forms, who are full in the six opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are the enjoyers of the internal potency. Thinking the Absolute Personality of Godhead to be poverty-stricken or to have no potency, or in other words, to be impotent, is simply rascaldom. This rascaldom is the profession of the conditioned soul, and it increases his bewilderment. One who cannot understand the distinctions between the spiritual world and the material world has no qualification to examine or know the situation of the transcendental quadruple forms. In his commentary on Vedanta Sutra 2.2.42-45, His Holiness Shripad Sankaracharya has made a futile attempt to nullify the existence of these quadruple forms in the spiritual world. Sankaracharya says in Sutra 42 that devotees think the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Sri Krishna, to be one, to be free from material qualities, and to have a transcendental body full of bliss and eternal existence. He is the ultimate goal of the devotees who believe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands himself into four other eternal transcendental forms: Vasudeva, Sankar's son, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. From Vasudeva, who is the primary expansion, comes Sankar's son, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. In that order. Another name of Vasudeva is Paramatma. Another name of Sankar's son is Jiva, the living entity. Another name of Pradyumna is mind, and another name of Aniruddha is Ahankara, false ego. Among these expansions, Vasudeva is considered the origin of the material nature. Therefore, Sankaracharya says that Sankar's son, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha must be creations of the original cause. So, this is the false explanation by Sankaracharya. Great souls assert that Narayana, who is known as the Paramatma, or Supersoul, is beyond material nature, and this is in accordance with the statements of the Vedic literature. Mayavadis also agree that Narayana can expand himself in various forms. Sankara says that he does not attempt to argue that portion of the devotee's understanding, but he must protest the idea that Sankarsana is produced from Vasudeva, Pradyumna is produced from Sankarsana, and Aniruddha is produced from Pradyumna. For if Sankarsana is understood to represent the living entities created from the body of Vasudeva, the living entities would have to be non-eternal. The living entities are supposed to be freed from material contamination by engaging in prolonged temple worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, reading Vedic literature, and performing yoga and pious activities to attain the Supreme Lord. But if the living entities had been created from material nature, at a certain point, they would be non-eternal and would have no chance to be liberated and associated with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When a cause is nullified, its results are nullified. In the second chapter of the Vedanta Sutra's second kanda, Acharya Vedavyasa has also refuted the conception that the living beings were ever born. Natma Shruter Nitya Tvach Cha Tabyaha. Because there is no creation for the living entities, they must be eternal. Okay, so now you see what's happening here is we're getting into the nuts and bolts of how Sankaracharya misled people through his Sarirak Bhashya, his commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And he had to do this, he was ordered to do this by Narayana, or Krishna, in order to eventually chase the Buddhists out of India and reestablish the authority of the Vedas, but with a false interpretation that would be easily accepted by the Buddhists who converted to, who were converted by Sankaracharya. In other words, he gave a Buddhist-like interpretation to the Vedas and at the same time established the authority of Vedas again. Later on, his false interpretation was corrected by Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya, and eventually by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So here, we're, in this particular section, we're hearing how Sankaracharya gave a false explanation of the quadruple expansion. There are two quadruple expansions, as we've already read. The second quadruple expansion will lead to the Vishnu incarnations that are the cause, maintenance, and destruction of the material creation. The first quadruple expansion from Krishna populates the spiritual world. And then the second quadruple expansion populates the material world. So this is, so Sankaracharya tries to give a false interpretation of the second quadruple expansion, thereby creating the illusory concept that the highest achievable goal of spiritual life is to merge into the impersonal Brahman, and therefore creating this school of philosophy called Kevala Advaita, absolute oneness, as the supreme goal of all yoga and all efforts for liberation. And he does it in a very peculiar way. He cannot contradict Vedavyas, who wrote the Vedanta Sutra and who is actually an incarnation of Krishna. He doesn't say that Vedavyas made a mistake. He can't do that, otherwise he would nullify his authority. But he says Vedavyas didn't make a mistake, but he gives an interpretation of what Vedavyas wrote. So he doesn't want to say he made a mistake, but he interprets it in a different way. So that's a very subtle point, because if he says Vedavyas made a mistake, then he would be rejected by Vedic authorities. So he just gives a different interpretation of what Vedavyas said, and he does that by by a word jugglery, and the area where he does that is in the interpretation of the second quadruple expansion, or Chaturvyuha, which is, as I said, for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world. Okay, so we're going to read this again a little bit, and because when you read this, you might think it's a correct description, but actually the description he's giving at this particular point is the misinterpretation of Sankaracharya. So it says, the quadruple forms, I'm reading again what we just read. The quadruple forms have a spiritual existence that can be realized in Vasudeva Sattva, or Suddha Sattva, or the unqualified goodness, which accompanies complete absorption in the understanding of Vasudeva. So the word Vasudeva with a long A is referring to Krishna. It means he's the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. So what he's saying here is that you can only understand the spiritual existence of the quadruple expansion, the second quadruple expansion, if one is transcendental to the influence of the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And this is called Vasudeva Sattva, or Suddha Sattva. In other words, it's unqualified goodness. Transcendental goodness, let's put it like that. So one becomes situated in transcendental goodness by constant engagement in devotional service, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasana Atma Nasochati Nakangsati Samaksar Vesu Bhutesu Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. So this is Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, 54th verse. One who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments, nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So this is called the Visuddha Sattva stage, when one is no longer influenced by any material situation or thought. And one's mind is fully fixed on Krishna, and one is prasanatma, self-satisfied in and of himself by dint of his understanding of his eternal relationship with God, or Krishna. In other words, he's not disturbed by anything material, because he's thoroughly absorbed in his eternal relationship with the Lord. That's called prasanatma. And he's in a state called Brahmabhuta. It's a liberated state of perfect oneness with the Lord. That doesn't mean he becomes the Lord. The perfect oneness is he always agrees with the Lord's desire. So the example of that is Arjuna. At first he disagreed with Krishna, but then after asking Krishna so many questions and getting so many answers, he agreed with Krishna, and he said that now my illusion is over. I know who I am. I'm your eternal servant. This is your best mercy on me, or this is your tat prasadat mayuchita. This is your ultimate blessing to me, and I no longer have any doubts. I'm firmly situated in my position as your servant, and now karishe vachanam tava. Whatever you say, that's what I'm going to do. So that is the Brahmabhuta stage of perfect oneness with the Lord. Oneness in purpose, not I become the Lord, or I merge into some oneness. The The oneness is Karishe Vachanam Tava. Whatever you say, my Lord, that is what I'm going to do. So this Visuddha Sattva stage, or Vasudeva Sattva stage of unqualified goodness. And he says, this accompanies complete absorption in the understanding of Vasudeva, or Krishna. Complete absorption in the understanding of Krishna. Okay. The quadruple forms who are full in the 6 opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are the enjoyers of the internal potency. Internal potency means the Samvit, Sandini, and Hiladini internal potencies of Krishna. That is, eternity, all knowledge, and transcendental bliss. Hiladini potency is personified as Srimati Radharani, which we see right here, the eternal consort of Krishna. So, the quadruple forms who are full in the 6 opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are the enjoyers of the internal potency. Thinking the absolute, now we are trying to enjoy the external potency, Durga Devi. And Durga, there's a word Durga. Durga means difficult. In our life, by trying to enjoy the external potency, we're always in difficulty. But if we participate in Krishna consciousness, we begin to experience the internal potency in which there is ultimate freedom from all anxiety, duality, etc. And time also. One is free from all these things. Okay. So, thinking the absolute personality of Godhead to be, so, the quadruple forms who are full in the 6 opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are the enjoyers of the internal potency. Thinking the absolute personality of Godhead to be poverty-stricken, or to have no potency, or, in other words, to be impotent, is simply rascaldom. So this is what the Mayavadis talk about. They say that they talk about Daridra Narayana. Daridra Narayana means that God appears as a poor man, and he'll come and knock on your door and ask for alms. Therefore, you should recognize that that beggar is actually God. It's not true. God is never a beggar and is never poor. These are quasi-poetic terms that are fabricated by the Mayavadis, or impersonalists, and they're actually insulting to God. So the quadruple forms, all Narayana forms, are full in 6 opulence, all riches, all knowledge, all beauty, all fame, all power, and all renunciation, and are the enjoyers of the internal potency. Thinking the absolute personality of Godhead to be poverty-stricken, or to have no potency, or in other words, to be impotent, is simply rascaldom. This rascaldom is the profession of the conditioned soul, and it increases his bewilderment. One who cannot understand the distinctions between the spiritual world and the material world has no qualification to examine or know the situation of the transcendental quadruple forms. Now begins the explanation of Sankaracharya's false interpretation of the Vedanta Sutra, verses 2.2, 42 to 45. His Holiness Sripad Sankaracharya has made a futile attempt to nullify the existence of these quadruple forms in the spiritual world. So, although Sankaracharya has done this dastardly thing, still Srila Prabhupada refers to him as His Holiness Sripad Sankaracharya. Why? Because Sankaracharya is actually an incarnation of Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva was ordered to do this by Narayana himself, and for the purpose of expelling the Buddhists from India and establishing the authority of the Vedas again. Lord Buddha, who is an incarnation of Krishna, came at a particular time 2,500 years ago when Hinduism or Vedic Dharma had deteriorated due to the non-qualification of the Brahmanas at that time. And they were performing Vedic sacrifices, horse sacrifices, cow sacrifices, in the name of the Vedas, but because they were no longer qualified, beginning with Kali Yuga, which began 5,000 years ago, they were not able to bring the animals that they sacrificed back to life again. Therefore, they ended up with a char-boiled carcass. And in order to validate their mistake, they said, this is Mahaprasadam. So that in the name of Vedic Dharma, they were encouraging meat eating at the time. And this is what Buddha saw. Buddha, of course, was a Hindu priest, a Hindu royal, he was born in a Hindu royal family. But he noticed that there was a lot of suffering. And when he began to analyze why there was so much suffering, he realized it's because the Brahmins were no longer qualified. And they were performing these horrible Vedic sacrifices, sacrificing cows and horses, and ending up with a barbecue, and then offering the barbecue as prasadam to the people. So they were promoting meat eating in the name of the Vedas. So Buddha said, look, I'm not even going to try and explain to them what they're doing wrong. I'm going to reject the Vedas, pull the rug out under their feet, and start a new religion that teaches ahimsa paramo dharma, that the highest principle of spirituality is nonviolence, and stop all this animal killing and meat eating. But what is very ironic is that now fast forward 2,500 years, many Buddhists eat meat today. Right? You know that? I mean,
yeah. Many don't, though. Many Hindus eat meat too.
No, forget about the Hindus. We know they eat meat. No, but the Buddhists, their principle, the whole idea why Buddha started their religion was to stop that. So when you have the Dalai Lama that says, "Oh, I don't eat meat on Fridays or Thursdays,"
twice a week.
Oh, yeah, I only eat meat twice a week. You know.
No. He says I'm a vegetarian twice a week.
Oh, I'm a vegetarian twice a week.
Oh,
yeah.
Does the Dalai Lama say that?
Yeah.
Yes.
I did not know that.
You learned something new tonight.
And they offer a fresh veal to.
Huh?
They offer a fresh veal to deity of Buddha every day.
Veal.
Yes.
Oh, gross.
Yeah.
Well, that makes my skin crawl.
Yeah.
Ugh. That
Okay.
gives me goosebumps.
Okay.
I
So.
don't like that. Oh, ow.
So now we're going to continue in the false interpretation of Sankaracharya. He says, Sankaracharya says, Sutra 42, in the Vedanta Sutra, that devotees think, devotees meaning the Vaishnavas, think the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva or Sri Krishna to be one, to be free from material qualities, and to have a transcendental body full of bliss and eternal existence. He is the ultimate goal of the devotees who believe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands himself into 4 other eternal transcendental forms: Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Now here comes this false interpretation. From Vasudeva, who is the primary expansion, come Sankarshan, meaning from Krishna, who is the primary expansion, come Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, in that order. Another name of Vasudeva is Paramatma. Another name of Sankarshan is Jiva, the living entity. Another name of Pradyumna is mind. And another name of Aniruddha is Ahankara, false ego. Now, these are all false interpretations of Sankaracharya. Among these expansions, Vasudeva is considered the origin of the material nature. In other words, Krishna is considered the origin of material nature. Therefore, Sankaracharya says that Sankar, San, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha must be creations of that original cause. In other words, he's implying that they must be material, not spiritual. Great souls assert that Narayana, who is known as the Paramatma or Supersoul, is beyond the material nature. And this is in accordance with the statements of the Vedic literature. Mayavadis also agree that Narayana can expand himself in various forms. Sankara says that he does not attempt to argue that portion of the devotee's understanding, the portion that says that Krishna can expand himself into other forms. But he must protest the idea that Sankarshan is produced from Vasudeva. So now, this is where he becomes malicious. He's contesting the fact that Sankarshan is coming from Krishna. And in other words, he wants to materialize Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So then he says, he must protest the idea that Sankarshan is produced from Vasudeva or Krishna. Pradyumna is produced from Sankarshan, and Aniruddha is produced from Pradyumna. For if Sankarshan is understood to represent the living entities created from the body of Vasudeva, the living entities would have to be non-eternal. So in other words, what he's trying to do is say that the individual living entities that we see, like here is Michael, and here's so-and-so, and here I am. He's trying to say that all individuality is actually illusory. That's what he's trying to come to. And that the whole material world itself is an illusion. And that is summarized in the Mahavaikya, or the great phrase of the Mayavadis, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mitya. That only the Brahman effulgence is the truth, and the Jagat, the entire material creation, with the living entities, with incarnations of Krishna, this and that, they're all illusions. And the way he does it is by making this protest, and then and doing a word jugglery. The living entities are supposed to be freed from material contamination by engaging in prolonged temple worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, reading Vedic literature, and performing yoga and pious activities to attain the Supreme Lord. But if the living entities had been created from material nature at a certain point, they would be non-eternal and would have no chance to be liberated and associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When a cause is nullified, its results are nullified. That's what he's done. See, this is like philosophy, but this is giving a profile of what's called the nullification of real philosophy. So when a cause is nullified, he says here, its results are nullified. So if Sankarshan is not an expansion of Narayana, but rather a figment of the imagination, then the whole material world is a figment of the imagination. The whole material world is an illusion. Okay? Or when a cause is nullified, its results are nullified. In the second chapter of the Vedanta Sutras, second Kanda, Acharya Vedavyasa has also refuted the conception that the living beings were ever born. Yeah, what Sankarshan is saying here, that, you know, what the Vedavyasa said was that the living entities, you and me, we were never born. We're eternal. So, Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 20th verse, Najayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuya ajo nitya sasvatam yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sarira. And he says it in a very emphatic way, leaving no doubt. He says, for the soul, meaning the individual soul, you and me, there is neither birth nor death at any time. The soul has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So, Krishna is the eternal Supreme Personality Godhead, and we are all part and parcel of Krishna. Mamaivam sa jiva loka, jiva bhuta, jiva loka sanatana. So that's the 14th chapter, 7th verse, 15th chapter, 7th verse, that says, Mamaivam sa jiva bhuta, jiva loka sanatana. We are described, the living entities, the mama eva amsa, the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. That's what Krishna says. So here we have actually 3 verses that establish the full eternality of the individual soul, meaning you and me, the jivas. Number 1 is 2nd chapter, 12th verse, which says, Natvevaham jatuna samna tvam nemi janadi baha nachayvina bhavishyama sarvivayama takparam. Krishna says to Arjuna, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. In other words, he's establishing the full eternality of the individual soul, meaning you and me, in the past, in the present, and in the future. Then he says, 2nd chapter, 20th verse, the soul never came into being. It's always existed. And it cannot die when the body dies. It exists before this body, exists in the body, and exists after this body is gone. And then that we are the eternal part and parcel of the Lord, Sanatana. So in 3 verses, more verses also, he establishes the full eternality of the individual soul. Whereas Sankaracharya, by his word jugglery, playing around with the 2nd Chaturvyuha, he tries to say that the individual souls are actually illusory. They're not eternal, and they're material, and therefore they do not have an origin from the absolute personality of Godhead. So this is exactly what modern materialists do. They create a wedge between God and matter. Matter, or material energy, is an energy of God. It's not separate from Him. But by creating a wedge, they say, okay, you can believe in a God, but that's something we can't measure, therefore we don't believe in it. But if you feel good believing in God, well, just okay with us that you feel good. But don't pretend that it's something scientific or real. It's an imaginary construct to keep you in a comfort zone. Right? Right? That's it? Yeah. Yeah. But the real facts are that the material world is independent of God. Or as Sartre said, we are cursed to be independent. Therefore, we cannot depend on some God. We have to fend for ourselves in a heroic way in this material world. It's a bunch of BS. He was a crazy guy. I met him once in France.
Not all French, like 80% of them were kind of cuckoo.
Well, the British are worse than the British philosophers are worse than the French. The French are crazy. The British are intelligent demons. You know, they're very, very intelligent and very demoniac. And the French did come up with all these crazy ideas like Camus and Sartre and all these guys. But anyway, let's forget about that. Let's look at what is actually happening. Modern science separates the material energy from any conception of God. In fact, they don't even think that there's a spiritual world. If they can't measure it, they say it doesn't exist. You know, it's something imaginary.
Actually, I don't even think modern science even exists, because they're not even preaching real science nowadays. It's all opinion.
I know, but I'm saying this is what they do. And Sankaracharya has done the same thing in a very clever way. But he did it for a purpose, and that was to convince the Buddhists to give up their ways and reestablish the authority of the Vedas. Anyway.
It shouldn't be called modern science. It should be called modern scientific philosophy.
You call it whatever you want, but they separate man and nature from God. And they say, or as we explained last week, they claim that nature is the cause of everything. Right? Remember? And then they're famous, but Prabhupada summarized their foolishness with the phrase,
modern scientific philosophy promotes
cause is the product.
The cause is the product of the
The independent variable is the cause of the dependent variable.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So modern science nowadays doesn't even use scientific method. That's why it should be called scientific philosophy.
Whatever you want to call it, but it's materialistic.
Yeah,
and materialistic in the sense that everything comes from matter, and matter generates its own cause.
Completely leads you away from God.
Right. But see, this is Sankaracharya's very subtle way of doing it also, by giving the false interpretation of second Chaturvyuha. Okay, then he says, first he explains how the Vaishnavas can become liberated from material entanglement. So he explains that correctly. He says the living entities are supposed to be freed from material contamination by engaging in prolonged temple worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, reading Vedic literature, and performing yoga and pious activities to attain the Supreme Lord. And now he goes off the rails. But if the living entities had been created from material nature at a certain point, they would be non-eternal and would have no chance to be liberated and associated with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When a cause is nullified, its results are nullified. In the second chapter of the Vedanta Sutras, second Kanda, Acharya Vedavyas has also refuted the conception that the living entities were ever born. Because there is no creation for the living entities, they must be eternal. Okay, so Sankaracharya is trying to say that they're not eternal. So he is contradicting Vedavyas, but he's not trying to do it with a direct statement. He's doing it in a circuitous way, in a roundabout way.
So they come to the natural conclusion without saying it. He kind of leads them.
Well, if he says that Vedavyas made a mistake, no one would accept it.
So he leads them basically to the water of coming to the conclusion.
Yes.
And then they come to the conclusion by drinking.
Yeah.
He didn't say drink, right? He just kind of led them.
It was water spiked with marijuana. Let's put it like that. Right. Okay. Sankaracharya says, Sutra 43, that devotees think that Pradyumna, who is considered to represent the senses, has sprung from Sankarsan, who is considered to represent the living entities. But we cannot actually experience that a person can produce senses. Devotees also say that from Pradyumna has sprung Aniruddha. So in other words, he just said, but we cannot say that a person can produce senses. Again, the idea that matter is the cause of matter, right? It's not a fact. The matter does not produce the energy of creation. Just like the cell phone is not does not produce the energy to run the cell phone. The energy that runs the cell phone is coming from an outside source that has nothing to do with the cell phone, but it makes the cell phone work. So matter cannot generate matter or does not have the energy of generation. Matter is inert. It only seems active because it's infused with a soul or souls. The soul is the source of the energy. So in the same way, electricity is the source of the energy that makes the battery of the cell phone work. Without the cell phone and without the battery and without the charge of electricity, the cell phone won't work. So matter cannot generate itself. And here also, Sankaracharya is trying to say that the living entities were not generated, or were not expanded, were not eternal, and they're not expanded from God, but and therefore he's doing something different. He's trying to make the case that everything we are perceiving in this world is an illusion. It does not actually exist. There's only one thing that exists, and that is the Brahman effulgence, the eternal emanation of light in the universe. That is the ultimate state of God. But that is simply an energy of God. It's not the ultimate state. Behind all energy or behind all energies are persons. Just like if I think that the light bulb is producing the light, that is actually a mistake. The light bulb is a conduit through which the electricity goes through and produces the light. But behind the light bulb, there's a whole organization. You know, there's wires going to a junction box in this building, then wires going from the junction box in this building going to an outside junction box, and there's wires going from the outside junction box to the Puget Sound power factory, where there are generators, and they're run by either coal or gas or wind or water, and all those things are coming from the sun, which is the original source of all energy, and the energy of the sun is coming from the Brahma Jyoti, which is the effulgence that's being emanated from the body of Krishna. So we go back, at every step we go back to a person, right? And the ultimate person is God. So when you go to the Puget Sound energy factory, you see plenty of people there, right? And there's a CEO there, and there's a CFO, and there's a whole organization, right? But a little child will look at the light bulb and say, oh yeah, the electricity is coming from the light bulb, or the light is coming from the light bulb. Well, in one sense it's true, but there's a whole organization behind the light in the light bulb, and that's all intelligence driven by intelligent people. But if you keep going back far enough, you end up with Krishna. He's the source of all energies. And one of his energies is the Brahma Jyoti, and that is being, it's in the spiritual world, and it's entering this material world by being reflected off of the sun. And then the sun is diffusing that throughout the whole universe, and therefore everything, life is maintained by this energy of the sun. And then because of the sun, you have wind. Because of the sun, you have water. Because of the sun, you have, there's photosynthesis in plants. And then because photosynthesis in plants, it captures the energy of the sun, you have the production of glucose and other sugars. And then they become compacted over many, many thousands of years, and it becomes coal or gas or oil, and that compacted reserve of energy is used in factories to release that energy and produce electricity or produce this or that, whatever. So make cars run, etc. So there's always, if you go back far enough, you're coming to Krishna. And along the way, there are many demigods and many intelligent people that are part of the supply chain. Okay. Okay, so...
Is Durga a demigod?
Yes. Yes, she is. But she's a special demigod. She's extremely... She's a superintendent of the prison called the material world.
She's a Prajapati?
No, she's not a Prajapati. Well, no, Prajapati are men.
Oh.
They supply the seeds, right?
Durga is a pure devotee of Lord Sri Krishna, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to serve Durga is good.
No, well, no, it's like this. If you...
To serve a
No,
pure
no,
devotee
no, listen.
of Krishna
If you...
is what?
No, if you consider her... To serve any demigod with the idea that that demigod is independently situated is wrong. To honor a demigod as a servant of the Lord is correct.
Okay, that's how I do it.
I'm just explaining.
I just wanted to make sure.
I'm just explaining. You know, in every situation, there's a right way and a wrong way.
I understand. Thank
Okay. If you call your uncle father, that would be a mistake.
you. Durga is a pure devotee of Lord Sri Krishna. End of story.
Yes.
Yes.
She is called Chayeva.
Chayeva.
Chayeva means a shadow. The shadow has no independent movement. It only moves when the real body moves.
When Bhagwan orders her to move.
Yes.
Yes, I understand.
If you understand that, then you understand her position.
Hare Krishna.
But other people worship her as independent,
I know.
and that is a mistake.
It is not, they are not ready to be picked.
Okay, so okay, so we're going to finish this paragraph, and then we'll go on forward.
Krishna. Get it.
Therefore,
Thank you.
see, it says, even if they are full expansions, the floor of generation remains. Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, being distinct individual persons, cannot be one. Therefore, if they are accepted as absolute, full, and equal, there would have to be many personalities of Godhead. But there is no need to accept that they are many personalities of Godhead, because acceptance of one omnipotent God is sufficient for all purposes. The acceptance of more than one God is contradictory to the conclusion that Lord Vasudeva, the absolute personality of Godhead, is one without a second. Even if we agree to accept that the quadruple forms of Godhead are all identical, we cannot avoid the incongruous flaw of non-eternity. Unless we accept that there are some differences among the personalities, there is no meaning to the idea that Sankarshan is an expansion of Vasudeva, Pradyumna is an expansion of Sankarshan, and Aniruddha is an expansion of Pradyumna. There must be a distinction between cause and effect. For example, a pot is distinct from the earth from which it is made, and therefore we can ascertain that the earth is the cause and the pot is the effect. Without such distinctions, there is no meaning to cause and effect. Furthermore, the followers of the Pancharatric principles do not accept any differences in knowledge and qualities between Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. The devotees accept all these expansions to be one, but why should they restrict oneness to these quadruple expansions? Certainly we should not do so, for all living entities from Brahma to the insignificant ant are expansions of Vasudeva as accepted in all the Shrutis and Smritis. Okay, so now in this explanation, Sankaracharya is giving another, is continuing with false interpretation. He says, Sankaracharya also says, in Sutra 44, that he cannot accept the devotee's idea that Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are equally as powerful as the absolute personality of Godhead, full in the six opulences of knowledge, wealth, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation, and free from the flaw of generation at a certain point. Well, you see, he doesn't say that he disagrees with Vyasadeva. He says he doesn't agree with the devotees of Krishna. Because if he contradicts Vyasadeva, he would lose his authority. So he's trying to purport that the devotees have a wrong interpretation. But actually, he's giving a wrong interpretation. This is called a straw man argument. You set up a straw man, and then you knock him over because he's made of straw. So he's trying to purport that the devotees make a false interpretation of what Vyasadeva is saying, but by doing that, he can contradict Vyasadeva without insulting him. You see? And it's very clever and it's very subtle. So, what the Mayavadis fail to understand is achintya beda abeda tattva. The supreme absolute truth is inconceivably and simultaneously one and different. People can understand mundane oneness and mundane difference, but it's almost impossible to understand simultaneous inconceivable oneness and difference. But that is the nature of God, because he has incredible powers. So he can expand himself into what's called plenary expansions. Absolute expansions of himself, and each expansion has the same potency as he does, although they appear as individuals, distinct individuals.
Are these expansions pure devotees of Lord Sri Krishna?
No. These are expansions. He's talking basically the first quadruple expansion and the second quadruple expansion. They are plenary expansions of the Lord.
So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not a plenary expansion, or yes?
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. He's
not an expansion?
No.
Is he a pure devotee?
Of course. It's Krishna himself.
Pure devotee of himself?
No, he's Krishna himself.
He was therefore?
He's Krishna himself.
So he's not a pure devotee, he is himself.
He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This explains, Krishna explains this in the 4th chapter, 6th verse. Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishwarupi sam prakritim swam adistaya sambhavami atma mayaya. Krishna says, although I am unborn, and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So, Chaitanya is appearing as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he has the hue of Radharani surrounding him. So he's called the golden avatar. Krishna is very dark. Chaitanya appears as the golden avatar. Why? Because
so a Chinaman.
Listen, no, not a Chinaman. Because when Radharani heard that Krishna was going to appear in Kali Yuga to spread the Sankirtan movement, and he was going to assume her mood of loving himself. In other words, Krishna was confused by Radharani. He didn't understand why she seemed to be experiencing higher states of ecstasy than he himself. And that is because she was perceiving Krishna with such love and devotion that it was putting her into states of ecstasy that even Krishna could not understand. So he decided to accept her position to try and understand what she was experiencing. So he appears as Lord Chaitanya in the mood of Srimati Radharani. And as Lord Chaitanya, he does not declare himself to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he appears as a devotee of himself, with the mood of Radharani.
So he was a devotee of himself.
Well, he is assuming the position of Radharani so he can experience why she is having states of ecstasy that even he did not understand. The only way he could experience it is by accepting her position.
And at that time, he was a devotee of himself.
Well, no, this is called inconceivable oneness and difference. He is
appeared as a devotee, but
he
appears
as a devotee, yes.
Just to guide us to be like that.
And, you know, whenever his devotees claimed that he was Krishna himself, he would block his ears, not accept that.
So, my other question now.
Yeah.
Avatars.
Avatar means they are descended from the spiritual world in their original spiritual bodies.
Oh, so like?
No, Prabhupada is not an avatar.
Okay.
He is a pure devotee.
Oh, then help me understand this.
Yeah.
Help me understand this avatar business.
Yeah.
Please, explain it to me again.
There's 6 types of avatars. Okay. First of all, the word avatar means one who descends from the spiritual world.
From Vaikuntha?
Either Vaikuntha or Goloka, yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So, therefore, you have like Nrsingadev. He has a planet in Vaikuntha.
Narasringa Devi has a planet in Vaikuntha?
Yeah, he has an eternal form. He's an avatar. He descends in that eternal form. Lord Ramachandra is an avatar. He has a planet that's right in between Vaikuntha and Goloka.
Is Narasringa Narasimha? Or
Same thing.
Same thing. Okay,
Yeah.
Ga and Ga. Okay, I get it.
Singha means lion, and Nara means like a human being.
So I know him as Narasimha, and Narasingha are the same.
It's same, yeah.
Gotcha. And they are?
Now, anyway, let's go back to there's 6 types of avatars.
Okay.
Okay. There is number 1. You have Yuga avatar. Then you have Purusha avatar. So the Purusha avatars are the Vishnu.
I need to type this down and save it. This is very important. Please let me do this.
Well, you just take our book called The Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It's all in there.
Actually, I'm just going to voice record it, and then I'll write it down later. Here, let me find it, okay. Oops. Okay, go.
There's 6 types of avatars, or those transcendental personalities who descend from the spiritual world. And one is the Purusha avatars. They are Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and Shirodakshaya Vishnu. They are Narayana forms in the material world for the material creation, maintenance, and destruction. Then you have the Guna avatars, and that is Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. They're in charge of goodness and passion and ignorance, the 3 gunas. And then you have the Leela avatars, like Lord Chaitanya is a Leela avatar. They're for pastimes, specific pastimes. And then you have the Manvantara avatars. They're the Manus. They are the Prajapatis that populate the universe with different living entities. Okay, so you have, first of all, it was the Purusha avatar, Yuga avatar, Leela avatar, and then Guna. Huh? No, wait a minute. So let's start over. We have the Purusha avatars and Guna avatar, Leela avatar. Then you have the Yuga avatar. I'm sorry, no. The Lord Chaitanya is not a Leela avatar. Then I have the Guna avatar. Leela avatar is like Lord Ramachandra. The Yuga avatar is the avatar that establishes the path of spirituality that's recommended in the particular yuga. This is Kali Yuga. So Lord Chaitanya comes and he spreads the Harinam Sankirtan as the Yuga avatar. So in Satya Yuga, it was meditation. In the Treta Yuga, it was performing very grandiose sacrifices. And in the Dwapara Yuga, it's deity worship, and in Kali Yuga, it's Harinam Sankirtan. It's the Yuga avatar, the path of religion by which one can attain eternal salvation in that particular time. Okay, and then number 6 is called Shaktavish avatar. Shaktavish avatar, there's 2 types. One is a direct expansion of the Lord for a specific purpose, and the other is an individual who is given one of the powers of the Lord, and such as Vyasadeva. He's given literary power, so he can write all the Vedas. Right?
So someone told me the other last.
So those are the 6 types of avatars.
So thank you. Along that line, I believe, and please correct me if I misheard it or I'm saying it wrong. Vyasadeva is still alive,
Yes,
living in Himalayas.
yes. He's writing the Vedas for the next age, which is
And
Satya
he's an
Yuga.
avatar.
Yeah, he's a Shaktavish avatar.
Shaktavish.
He's a jiva like you and me,
Mhm.
but who's received one specific power of God, and that is literary power.
So these avatars, let's say, for example, me
Yeah.
offends one of them.
Well, you and me, we shouldn't offend anyone, whether they're an avatar or not an avatar, because let's say today I offend somebody, and tomorrow that person becomes a pure devotee. I become responsible retroactively for Vaishnava aparad. Therefore, we shouldn't offend anybody.
So then technically you cannot offend anybody.
Yes, exactly. We shouldn't offend anybody.
Technically speaking,
Huh?
Not just in deed, even in thought we are not supposed to offend.
Well, fortunately in Kali Yuga, you don't have karma for a thought. In previous ages, you did. In Kali Yuga, that one dispensation is there. That you should not. You're not responsible for a karma just because of a thought. In previous ages, you were, right? Otherwise, everyone would be condemned in this age. Yeah.
so are the avatars, are they all expansions of Krishna Vishnu or no?
All avatars are, expansions, either plenary expansion, partial plenary expansion, or partial plenary expansions existing in the spiritual world that descend for a specific purpose.
And they enter the womb when they descend. Exit the
No.
birth
It looks like they enter the womb, but now if you read, how did Krishna appear in this world? There was no seminal discharge that produced Krishna. Vasudeva and Devaki meditated for 12,000 years. And eventually the thought of Krishna entered the mind of Vasudeva. They were meditating on Krishna for 12,000 years, but then Vasudeva transferred the thought of Krishna to the womb to his wife, and because of that, Krishna appeared in her womb.
Gotcha, but they still exit the birth canal. They must pass through the birth canal to come into this plane.
That
of
I don't know.
reality, yes.
That I don't know. I don't know.
Well, no,
It
if
doesn't-
you
it
have the
doesn't-
Immaculate
it
Conception, then Mataji must birth.
Don't compare the Bible with the
I'm
Vedas.
not comparing.
Yeah.
I use Immaculate Conception when you use the word implanted the thought of Krishna.
Yeah.
Okay, so they C-sectioned him or what?
No,
Okay.
that's not the way he
I
appears.
know this is an aside and it's a tangent and it's probably like
We
not
can't
even
listen. We
important.
cannot add words to the scriptures.
Anyway, it's not important.
What we can do is accept the statement, because certain things are beyond our rational understanding.
I understand. That's
Okay,
why
so
I'm
therefore we
talking about-
accept the statements of the scriptures. Did he come out of a womb,
Yeah,
out
no,
of the
it
vagina?
doesn't
We
matter.
don't know.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't
no,
matter.
But back to the Avatar situation.
Yeah.
This is very.
There's one special case. That's the Shaktavish avatar, who's a jiva, an individual soul like you and me, who receives one specific power of the Lord. like Vyasadeva. He has literary power. And there are others that have different powers. So in that case, he's not a direct plenary expansion of the Lord. But you and me, as jivas, we are expansions of the Lord. We're all coming from the Lord. But it's possible that we receive a power, just like Narada Muni. He's a jiva, but he's also considered an incarnation of the Lord because he attained perfection in previous life, and therefore he appears as Narada Muni, who has, the ability to go anywhere in the universe without an airplane or a rocket or anything like that. And he's basically eternal, and he's preaching always the glories of the Lord. So it's possible for an individual like you and me to receive an incredible power of the Lord to perform a specific task. Okay, we don't have a planet in the spiritual world, whereas Nrsingadev, he is an avatar in the sense that he has an eternal form in the spiritual world, and he descends in this world with that eternal form and performs his pastime, and then he goes back again to his eternal abode. It's a specific Vaikuntha planet. Okay.
So this avatar.
And Lord Ramachandra is like that also. Yeah. Okay.
Ramachandra.
Yeah.
Anyway, this avatar business is very close to my heart, and I thank you for expanding on it further.
Yeah.
I may, later in private, I may have some more intimate questions.
You're going to tell me that you're an avatar?
Is that a question or is that a statement?
I'm just joking.
I know, it's okay to joke. You and I joke because we're close, but
Yeah.
but I'm serious about this, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So now let's just finish. Well, it's late. We'll stop now and continue continue next Monday.
Partha still wants me to chop tomatoes. So
Good. Okay. Don't always count your fingers before you stop chopping. You have to count them when you finish chopping.
Always
Make
8
sure.
fingers, always.
Okay. 8 is, it's better than 6. That's,
Well, 8 fingers and 2 thumbs.
Oh, okay.
Is a thumb a finger?
Yes.
It's a thumb.
Okay.
Blood red carrots.
Yes. Blood red. Okay.
Thank you, by the way, thank you for the avatar.
No problem.
That really means a lot to me. Thank you.
We will continue again tomorrow.
Hare Krishna.
This.
Tomorrow's Friday.
No, I'm sorry. We'll continue Monday.
Okay, Krishna, Haribol.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Haribol. Okay, there you go.
Oh, Acharya, I love you so much.
I love Prabhupada. This is all Prabhupada's mercy.
Let me help you out.
No, I'm okay. No, don't move. It has to stay exactly like that.
Okay. Give me a hug, please.
Haribol.
Thank you.
Chant Hare Krishna and be happy.
But remember, we found out in Chaitanya yeah, didn't talk about chanting. We talked about
Meditate.
right. Thank you.
But meditation is on the holy name.
I know that. It's not
mantra meditation.
Yeah, I know. But people just sitting around counting. It's counting. It's not chanting.
No, it is chanting.
It's chanting, but it's also counting.
Chanting